When I got the text from my father, I was sitting on the kitchen floor with a half-finished cup of coffee, watching the rain trace patterns down the window. It was a quiet morning, one of those moments that feels peaceful right before your world collapses. The phone buzzed. Just one vibration. I reached for it, expecting another one of his usual check-ins. But instead, the screen read, "Dad, sweetheart, I'm sorry. Your trust fund is gone." My fingers went cold. Gone? That couldn't be right. The trust fund wasn't just money. It was my mother's legacy, the thing she fought for before she died. She'd set it up so no one, not even my father, could touch it until I turned 25. I was 24, just 1 year away, and now it was gone. But what my father didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I'd already found something a week before that text arrived. Something that told me the money wasn't lost. It was taken, and by the man who had raised me. I must have read that message a dozen times. My reflection in the phone screen didn't even look like me anymore. Eyes wide, face pale, hands trembling. Gone. I whispered to myself. I typed back slowly. Me. What do you mean it's gone? The 3 dots popped up, then disappeared, came back, vanished again. Finally, his reply appeared. "Dad, it was invested. The company failed. I'll fix it, Leah. Just don't tell anyone." Don't tell anyone. That line punched harder than anything else. My father was a businessman, precise, calculating, successful. The kind of man who never lost money. But lately, he'd been distant. He traveled more, locked his study door more often. And when I asked about Mom's estate, he always said, "Don't worry about that, sweetheart. Your future is secure." Now I understood why he'd said it with that nervous smile. Still, I didn't answer his text. Instead, I walked to the study, the one he'd forbidden me to enter since I was a child, and stood at the door. I could almost smell the cigar smoke that used to fill that room, hear the sound of his phone calls that went on for hours. And suddenly, I remembered something else, that email. The one I'd gotten a week earlier from an unknown sender. It had no subject, no message, just one attachment labeled, "Your mother's file." I had opened it out of curiosity. At first, I thought it was a scam. But when I saw my mother's name on the first page, my breath caught in my throat. The file contained bank records, transaction slips, and offshore accounts. Every document was signed by 2 names. My father, Richard King, and his business partner, Mason Holt. The same Mason who had been my godfather. The same man who comforted me at my mother's funeral. The documents were dated over 10 years ago, months before Mom's car accident. I'd stared at those files for hours that night, the pieces clicking together one by one. The sudden insurance payout, the expensive properties, the way my father's company expanded right after Mom died. And that line from the coroner's report, brake failure. It never sat right with me. Now, looking at those financial records, I realized her death wasn't a tragedy. It was a cover-up. And the trust fund, it wasn't lost. It was stolen long before I ever turned 25. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the dinner table across from the man who'd raised me, pretending everything was fine. He smiled, like always, and asked about my internship. "You enjoying the corporate world?" he asked. "Learning the value of money?" The hypocrisy burned. "Yes," I said softly. "Learning a lot about trust, too." He chuckled, sipping his wine. "Good. You'll need that." I looked up at him. "What about you? Dad, do you trust everyone you work with? He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Why? Just curious, I said, forcing a smile. His eyes narrowed slightly, just for a second, then softened. Of course, sweetheart. Mason and I go way back. His family. Family. That word made my skin crawl. I didn't show it, but my heart was racing. I knew that behind his calm face, behind that charming laugh, was a man who had betrayed both his wife and his daughter. I excused myself early that night, because tomorrow I was meeting someone who claimed to have the rest of the truth. The person who sent me that email. It was raining again when I pulled into the cafe parking lot. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your stomach knot. I sat there for a minute, breathing deeply, before walking in. A woman in her late 40s was sitting in the corner, her face half hidden under a scarf. When she saw me, she waved me over. You're Leah, she said softly. Yes. She leaned closer. My name is Angela. I worked for your father. And your mother. My pulse quickened. You sent me the file. She nodded. Your mother found out what they were doing, the money transfers, the fake companies. She wanted to expose them. But before she could, Angela's eyes filled with tears. She died in that crash, I whispered. Angela nodded. She told me she was scared. She said your father was changing, that he was desperate. When I saw the car report after the crash, I knew something was wrong. The brakes weren't just faulty, they'd been tampered with. My hands shook under the table. She kept copies of everything, Angela continued, hidden in a safe in her art studio, the one your father locked up after she died. I felt sick. He said the studio was being renovated. It never was, Angela said. He just didn't want you to find it. I took a deep breath, staring down at the flash drive Angela slid toward me. What's on this? Her final video, Angela whispered. She recorded it the night before she died. I drove home with my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the rain hitting the windshield. In my room, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen flickered. Then there she was, my mother, her face pale, eyes tired, but still beautiful. If you're watching this, she began, then something's happened to me. Leah, I need you to know I love you, and I need you to be careful. Richard isn't who you think he is. I froze. He and Mason have been stealing from our company. From you. The trust fund was supposed to protect you, but he's been moving the money offshore. If I confront him, I don't know what he'll do. But I can't stay silent anymore. Her voice broke. Whatever happens, promise me you'll find the truth. The video ended abruptly, like it had been cut off mid-sentence. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, every piece of me shaking. She knew. She tried to stop him, and she died for it. That was the night I decided I would stop pretending. I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his reckoning. The next morning, I texted him. Me, dinner tonight? Just us. He replied almost instantly. Dad, of course, sweetheart. 7 p.m. Perfect, I whispered. When I arrived at the restaurant, I could feel the air between us was different. He smiled, but his eyes were wary, studying me. He ordered the usual steak, red wine. Talked about business, the market, Mason's trip abroad. I waited until the wine came. Then I reached into my bag and placed the flash drive on the table. He froze. What's that? Proof, I said softly, of what you did. To Mom. To me. His face went pale. Leah, She knew about you and Mason, about the transfers, the fake companies, the trust fund. His hand trembled. You don't understand. No, I interrupted. You don't. She left that trust to protect me, and you used it to protect yourself. He looked down, his voice breaking. I didn't mean for her to die. It was supposed to scare her. She wasn't supposed to. My chest screeched as I stood. So it's true. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 days later, the headlines hit every news channel. Business magnate Richard King under investigation for fraud and possible homicide. Mason Holt vanished overseas. My father didn't run. He couldn't. When the police arrived at our house, he just stood in the doorway, looking at me like a man who'd finally seen himself clearly for the first time. He didn't beg. He didn't deny it. He just said quietly, "You're just like her." And as they led him away, I whispered, "That's the best thing you've ever said to me." The trust fund was never recovered, but I didn't need it. I used what I had left of Mom's memory, her words, her strength, and started something new, the Whitmore Foundation, a place for women trapped in financial abuse, manipulation, and control, the same way my mother once was, because I finally understood. It was never just about the money. It was about power, and taking it back. As I stood at the unveiling of Mom's portrait in the new foundation office, I looked up at her smile and whispered, "I kept my promise, Mom. I found the truth." And for the first time in years, I felt free.